So namaste and greetings, Michael. Welcome to the Experience School Convos with inspirational authors that we do every Sunday. This is season 2, and we are opening with a few authors. We had Barke Kamus, who's also from London, from the UK last week, and today we have the Michael Emmett, Mike Emmett, who's going to inspire with us with his inspiring life story and journey of life. So welcome once again, Mike.
Thank you. Nice to meet you, Jerry. Lovely to meet you.
Pleasure meeting with you too. You know, Michael, I'm a writer and an author myself, and I think the best gift that you can give to human beings, to children, is the gift of reading. And I was very inspired by a book when I first read about the entire plot, and I want to know more about that today. So every Sunday at 7 p.m. we invite authors who write books in 3 genres. One is inspirational, self-help, and personal development books. The second is autobiographies like yours, which inspire people with their true stories of real heroes, as we call them. And the third is books which are about exposing wrongs in our society, in our world. So we have authors in these 3 genres that we focus on from around the world. And we are very glad and happy to have you with us, Mike, today. And to begin with, I would like to ask you, Mike, to share with us your entire life story, right from childhood to now, with everything in between. And you know, I'm going to disappear. I'm not going to disappear. I'm going to be on the screen, but you're going to kind of be on the screen exclusively, so that our audience who's tuned in today on Facebook Live, on the Rex page, will get to know more about you, your entire life journey, the story of your life. And I'm sure they'll get a lot of life leadership and learning to learn lessons, as we call them, from your inspiring story. So it's exclusively your time. Take your time, 10 minutes, 12 minutes, whatever it takes, and tell us your story, right from childhood to your days as a gangster, to your days working in gangs and organized crime, to trafficking drugs, to being an addict yourself, and then your path of recovery, and what actually helped you to kind of transform and now give back and contribute to society in a big way. So over to you, Mike.
Thank you, Jerry. What a lovely introduction. Yeah, hello guys. My name's Michael. To start off with, my father was a career criminal. He was one of the biggest drug smugglers in the UK in the 80s and the 90s. Cannabis. My father was married 4 times. I was the second marriage. He had 3 siblings. And there was a lot of stuff. My father was a war baby. He was a professional. He was a good amateur boxer, and we lived in London. You know, he was a war child, and he gravitated to the criminal underworld, and that's what he done. He was a professional criminal. And when we had these 3 children with my mother, he decided to try and better our lives, and he took us out of London to live down in Surrey when I was a very young boy of about 6. I'd had sexual abuse at a very young age. I don't mean to offend anyone when I say that, but I was sexually abused for a number of years, which had a profound effect on my relationships with women. I was taken down to Surrey. So coming out of London and going to Surrey was a complete, transformation of culture, life. I was living in the council flat, which I'm sort of proud of. And then I went to live in Surrey, where there was big open fields. But it doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter if you're in poverty or wealth. I mean, those things do have something, they do influence our beings. But the mere fact is, what is so important is that we're connected to our heart, our mind, our body, our soul in a spiritual way, for me. So I was quite a dysfunctional child. My father was this criminal. And I do believe that we have, the book I wrote is called Sins of Fathers, because I do believe that the sins of our forefathers become paramount in our lives. So this started to develop in me. I wasn't shown crime. In fact, I was shown the other way. My brother and sister, they loved school. They were grade A students. I couldn't concentrate. I flunked in school. I started smoking at a very early age, drinking at a very early age, and I started stealing at a very early age. As to much as my dad's dismay, he was very upset that I'd gone that way. It wasn't from his leadership I went that way, but because my dad never used to bring his crime into the house. But he was probably one, a major criminal in London's in London back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, as I said. Anyway, we was down in Surrey. I couldn't wait to leave school. I excelled at football and rugby and swimming. And then when I started to leave school, I got involved with more crime. I spent 3 different times in prison. I graduated from stealing things. This is not to talk about crime in a way that it's clever. I'm talking about the transformation that I went through to come away from these certain environments that I'd grown accustomed to, how I earned my money. I went to prison when I was 20. I went to prison when I was 24. I was wanted by the police. I went to live in Spain, where there was a smuggling operation there. But very tragically, my brother died in a car accident. That never helped me. The sex abuse, my brother dying. He left behind a son that he never met. His mother's a very famous artist, a painter. But so all that was going on. And then I really got involved heavily with drink and drugs. And so the mind was distorted. The heart was closed. So much pain. I blame God. Why have you done this to me? I had an influence of a Catholic faith from my grandmother, but I thought God was a punishing God. Anyway, I moved through my career, and then eventually, after my second term in prison, after losing my brother, he never met his son, who I said he's 33 years old today. So it had a profound effect on me. When I left prison that time, I went straight back to being a criminal, and I got arrested in 1993 for what was then the largest importation of cannabis into the UK. It was massive. And I was arrested with armed police, guns pointed to my head, but I was a broken child. I looked the part, I sounded the part, but I was broken. And I was a man of many masks. My mother was the most incredible woman you could imagine. She was full of love. My dad was full of fear, full of crime. So I had both of these sort of recipes going on inside of me, and they affect who you are, what you look like, and who you become. Little did I know that God had a plan. So I got sentenced to 12 and a half years. I got a big fine. At one stage, I looked like doing 18 and a half years in prison, but that changed. I was in prison as a drug addict, didn't know what to do, where to go, looking for a fix, looking to manipulate people, looking to get my needs felt, very selfish, because I couldn't get my thinking into my heart. I used to think from paranoia, mental health issues, addictions, and my heart was bursting to talk, because heart language is love language. I didn't know how to love myself, so I didn't know how to love anybody else. I've got 4 children today. I've got 7 incredible grandchildren, and I went through the prison system. And one day I went into the chapel to use the phone to manipulate the chaplain, but God had another idea. And I won't go into it too much because we haven't got a lot of time. But what happened was I proclaimed my faith, which is a Christian faith. I think there's only one God and we all share him, and however we seek him and find him. So I'm not against anything that anyone believes in or what they trust in, but my faith was the cross. And that's where I got touched in the prison chapel by an experience of something that was far greater than me. I got touched in my dirty soul. My mind started to come alive. My heart became alive. And we started a thing in prisons. It's an introduction to Christianity, but for the broken, for the drug addict, for the prostitute. And there's no judgment in what I say. We're all the same. God loves us all. Doesn't matter if we're wealthy, poor, rich, whatever you are, God loves us. And it's the love of God, however you find him, that enables us to take part in healing, to take part in loving our neighbor, loving ourselves. So I started this course in prison with a church in Knightsbridge in London, and it was called the Alpha Course. So we began the Alpha Course in 1994. I came out of prison after a number of years. I relapsed for 1 year on drugs again, but I'm now 22 years sober. I work in the prisons as I go in and I give my time for free. I was a very, very wealthy man from my criminal exploits, very, very wealthy. I lost everything. I couldn't even afford a bus fare. But in that, I found a deeper relationship with my God. I found a connection. I found that he wanted what was best for me. So all the toys I had was taken away and I was left with nothing. But in nothing, I found everything. I found Michael. I started to appreciate that I was loved, that I had a purpose, I had a calling. So this Alpha course has gone round the world. It's in 900 prisons. There's been many people been touched, many people, many lives changed. There was one man on death row in Uganda. He done this course, gave his life. He was on death row for 26 years. They released him. He now works for the Ugandan government again. So there's some amazing stories. And so I then was asked to write a book about my journey from dark to light. I wish I had more time to explain it. The book gives you a Wikipedia of my life. We're trying to do a documentary, and we're trying to turn it into a Netflix series. Excuse me, and it's all about we're working with the mental health, the addicts, the prisoners, people who need love, the wealthy, whoever you are, we all need love. So I was kindly asked to come on here by Jerry. I got the time wrong. It was my fault, Jerry. I didn't have my book with me, but you can find me on social media. You can listen to some of the book, or you can get whatever you want to do to find out the journey. And so that's me, really. I'm in love with my children and my grandchildren. God works in mysterious ways. And so I finished writing the book 5 months ago. It's out there. And there's been another change for me. I have a responsibility to what the book says. So I have to be obedient to this calling. I have to be righteousness in my prayer. And I have to show love and kindness wherever I am. And that's very difficult at times. But I'm a changed person. So something larger than me, bigger than me, changed me. And my journey continues. Thanks for listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. And that's a very inspiring journey. And Mike, I want to go deeper into your days as a child, the wonder years up to the age of 12, before your teens. How were those days? Because I heard you saying that, you had a father who was, in the world of crime, and he was living violence, he was living hatred, he was living conflict. And on the other hand, you had a mother who was the epitome of love. So what were your growing up, the wonder years as they are called? What were those like?
Well, see, when my dad took me out of South London, which was was okay, but then it was a pretty tough place to live, and we went down to Surrey. So, excuse me, my mother's love was unconditional, and as much as my father was that person, he never used to bring it home. So he was a supporting dad, and he used to do a lot of sport with me. But I always knew there was something I couldn't quite put my finger on. And then we were raided by the police, armed officers came into the house. So then you begin to understand. So there was a conflict. I was a mixture of an opposite. I was very fearful, but very fearless. There was no equilibrium for me. I was either high or low with emotions, and that dysfunction continued. Especially, I don't know if you heard me say, I don't mean to be horrible or unkind, but I was sexually abused as a young boy at the age of 5. It went on to I was about 8 or 9, and it was that made me quite dysfunctional. Like I said, my relationships with women and things like that. But so I had some great times as well, the wonder years. But I was sort of disconnected at a very early age. But, we used to have family holidays. We had a lovely home. We always had food. There was always time for the family. So there was good. We was taught good morals. It wasn't like a house full of an house of iniquity. It was a lovely home we lived in. It wasn't ostentatious. It was quite humble. We had a nice garden. We could play badminton. We had table football. So there was all the nice things for children to excel. And my mum and dad were always there, but there was always something permutating in my dad that, you know, it wasn't frightening, but it was there to receive. And children pick things up quite easily at a young age.
Right. So Mike, tell me, at what age did that trigger happen where you decided that you want to follow in the footsteps of your dad, in the footsteps of your father, and choose? Uh, uh, because what I'm hearing from you is that there was no coercion or force to get into a world of crime. So it was a choice. So at what age did you choose to kind of walk that path of going into organized crime? What age was that?
Well, I suppose at a very young age, I started stealing when I was about 11. I didn't have to.
Right.
So I started stealing, and then it was just sort of petty crimes. But I suppose I took the choice. When I came back from Surrey, I went to live up in London again, and I was around like-minded people. We were taking drugs. We was going out partying, because I started to work for my dad. My dad had a car business, and he
Right.
wanted me in there. So I went to work in there. But all of a sudden, my dad was trying to come out of the criminal activities as well. But, he was a well-known sort of gangster, if you coin a phrase. And when I really feel like I made the decision was when I was about 20, 19, 20, when I set my stall out and said, right, I'm going to go and be a criminal. And I sort of started stealing antique furniture. And because my dad was a profound drug smuggler, I sort of gravitated to selling his cannabis because I got it very cheap. I didn't have to pay straight away. And I started to build up quite a lucrative business from that. So around about 20, Jerry.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike. Thank you for all the candor and for sharing so honestly and candidly, talking straight about your life. That's very appreciated by me. And I'm sure all the audience is also kind of being inspired by the story. In psychological studies, I'm a leadership coach, and I, do a lot of trainings in the corporate sector in organizations around the world. And in psychological and neuropsychological studies, it has been proven that human beings, like animals, are a product of nature and nurture. Nature is the ancestry, the family, the community that we were born in, and nurture is the upbringing, what we see in our environment, see in our surroundings. But psychological studies also show that unlike animals, human beings are not just products of nature and nurture, because we have the third element, which is choice, because human beings are rational animals. Now, in your nurture, in your upbringing, in your early years, you had this entire episode from the age of 5 to 9 where you were sexually abused. What do you think that did to your mindset as a child? Do you want to share what were the thoughts?
Yeah. Well, I think it sort of, see, the difference was I had a beautiful mother and this abuser. And so my opinions, not that I realised straight away, because as children we're developing, but in my subconscious mind, I started to formulate, if you teach a kid French at 5, by the time he's 9, he's fluent. He doesn't know how he's learned it, he's listened to it, whatever he's done. So what I learned, there was 2 women in my life. One was a beautiful woman. One was sort of a broken woman herself. So without me knowing, it formulated an opinion that they were both the women I used to gravitate to as I got older. Yeah. So that sort of gravitated. So I think what it done to me, it opened me up sexually to things that I shouldn't have known about. Yeah. I thought women, I didn't understand, it was frightened me. It created a trauma in me. It was such a noisy trauma inside of me that I used to scream because I felt I'd been abandoned. Yeah. So that followed me all of my life. I was always very needy around women. Don't leave. It's okay. Because I was confused about what. So that was the most painful thing it done to me. The confusion of basically, and I didn't become the abuser in that way, but at times I didn't value women the way I should have done. I didn't value women the way I should have done.
So that did manifest into a person who couldn't really appreciate women and acknowledge them for what they are, is
Correct.
what I'm hearing you say. So in most cases of sexual abuse, and I research a lot of these cases because we are featuring them in our book called Karma Kari. I write books about true stories of real heroes, and it's called the Karma Kari series. And in Karma Kari we have a series called Karma Kari Karishma, the miracle within, because that miracle is within you, whether you
Amen.
want to break down or you want to break through. And like I was telling you, when we opened season 2 last week on the 23rd of May, we had Barke Kamus, who was also a survivor of child sex abuse. In most cases of child sex abuse, the abuser is mostly somebody known, well known to the community, the family, and to the child. Was it the same with you in your case?
Yes, very well known.
Yeah, very well known to you.
Very well known. Yeah.
Okay, okay. And moving ahead to, you said in 1993 is when you got busted with a large consignment of marijuana. How old were you at that time?
34.
34. Okay. And is it from that? Were you sober before that, or were you sober after you got imprisoned?
No, I sort of my addiction was, I used to control my addiction, because when you're working crime, we was international crime. The American mafia was involved. There was European drug smuggling people around from Europe. So you had to be very, very careful. You had to be on point. So I would binge drink and binge drink and binge use drugs. So I would do it for a few days. Then I'd clean up and go back to work for a number of months. So it didn't have control. Well, I didn't think it had control of me. So I was still using and taking drugs. I used to sniff cocaine and drink champagne. I know it's crazy, but I did before I went into prison. I got clean in prison.
You got cleaned up in prison, and and
Yeah.
and, and I read somewhere that there was a encounter you had with Samantha Fox, which also kind of led to some kind of transformation. What was that about?
Yeah, Samantha Fox was a friend of mine. She was she arrived at my church at Holy Trinity Brompton, which is in Knightsbridge, the home of Alpha, and she became friends with the vicar there. And I'd been married twice, so my wife was a friend of hers, and she'd become a Christian. And when I got arrested, she took my wife. I knew Sam prior to this as well. Not
Okay,
well, though. I'd only met her a few times, but she was a very, very good friend of my wife's. And I went to she went to HTB, and that's how I got introduced again, and that's how we got Alpha in prisons, through Samantha Fox.
brilliant. So that's the Samantha Fox influence in your life. Very nice.
Yes.
Okay, so tell us more about your married life. You said you've been married twice. Tell us a little more about the family life and the married life. When was the first time you got married? How old were you then? Were you already living in the walking in the world of crime, or were you kind of trying to figure out choices after having got married?
Okay, so my first it's a funny situation, because the mother of my children, which we call the Rock of Ages, which is Tracy, love of my life, this lady, a very beautiful woman, yeah, and she bore me three beautiful children, yeah, but we never got married. And when I left, because of my addictions, I'd had a few affairs. I was a bit naughty what I'd done, and I'm not proud of that, but I don't do that today. And I went to live in Spain, really broken. I was unwell when I went to live in Spain. I'd had an affair. My brother had died, and I didn't feel mentally well. And then I met this other young lady called Daniela, who was Samantha Fox's friend. So Daniela was my first wife. We never had any children. I loved Daniela. I went to prison. She helped me with Samantha Fox start the Alpha course. And then during the prison sentence, sadly, we split up. And when I came out of prison, I went back to Tracy, the mother of my three children, and I married Tracy. But sadly, that ended too. So I've got two ex-wives who I adore, both of them. And my children, I love my children. But the choices I made, um, you know, I didn't consider, I did consider in the pit of my being Because when I got arrested with a gun, they asked me what my opinion for my faults was. And I started to weep about my children because I was a family man at heart. But this mad head of mine took over. So my choices wasn't really based on other people's feelings or their realities. They was based on greed and selfishness, really, to be quite honest with you. So I made decisions based on being a crazy addict, being an abused child. So the love in me was locked away in my heart. So a lot of my choices I made wasn't good choices, to be honest with you.
Thank you for sharing that, Mike. And you sharing very openly and very candidly, and that helps because the audience would be able to relate to what you're talking about. So what I'm hearing you say is that you were not feeling well mentally, emotionally, which led you to make all the wrong choices during those times. Whether it's the first few years with Tracy where you had three children, then your marriage to Daniela, which was the first marriage where you didn't have any children, and then you got married to Tracy finally, and that also didn't last, like you said. So tell me more about your four children. How old
I
are
have
they
four
today?
girls. I have four girls,
Okay.
four beautiful girls. Three are from Tracy, and I had a child another relationship. Her name is Ruby, and Ruby and I. She lives in another part of London. She's a lovely girl. She's about 17 now. She's very bright at school, but I don't have her. I love her dearly, and I believe she loves me. But we don't see enough of each other. But my three children, with Tracy, my eldest is Amy. She's 39. I have a daughter, Lily, of 35, Beth, 33. They're wonderful children. They've had to battle through, their father's dysfunctional behavior. They stuck with me. They're all mothers now. They've got wonderful husbands. They all work very hard. I've got one part of my family in Spain. I've got three grandchildren out in Spain. But my seven grandchildren are my life. The eldest one's 14 and the youngest one's 1. And every single one of them are a product of mine and Tracy's. And they're a gift of love. They're from a gift of God. I'm very, very happy, very fortunate. I get on with them all very well. My children and my grandchildren. There's so much love in my life that now I'm able to receive it. And I'm very proud of my three girls and Ruby and my seven grandchildren. My eldest daughter, Amy, has been a pillar of support. My middle daughter, Lily, has been there to love me. And my youngest daughter, Beth, she's just been a very, very dear friend. I'm very blessed with my children and my grandchildren. Thanks for asking.
Thank you for sharing that. And that's a great family to have, a lot of family and support and love that you are experiencing now in your life. And I'm happy for you, Mike. Uh,
Thank you, Jerry.
so tell me, how was it for your children? You've written a book called Sins of Fathers, where I'm sure that you're talking about the sins of your father. But how do you think the sins that you have committed have affected them positively, negatively, in whatever way? What are your thoughts and insights on that?
Well, I think Jerry, I've really enjoyed talking to you. I think that I'm glad I never had sons. Yeah, I'm glad I never had sons. I think it affected my children, my girls, quite a lot. But they never see me drunk or stoned because when I came out of prison, although I had messed up a little bit, they didn't see a lot of me at that particular time. I made sure, so they only really know me as a sober father. And they've been through a lot of trial and tribulations. They've been through a lot of heartache, but it's made them stronger, better people. And we've worked through our resentments. We've arrived at a place of love. And sort of slowly but surely, I think women are a lot tougher than men, to be honest with you. I think they're a backbone, women. And I think where that comes from is giving birth. I think it's an amazing thing that women give birth. And I think it makes them incredible characters. So I'm very, very fortunate. I'm very, very fortunate to have had wonderful children, very strong. But yeah, they suffered but I think because they've seen the dramatic change that's enabled them to understand the mental health darkness to the lightness of following a faith, following morals, following love, following friendship. And I think they've now started to attach themselves to me in that way. And I think that's part of their healing.
Excellent. I'm very happy for you and for all your children that they've come out stronger from this, because that's what my book Karma Kari Karishma, The Miracle Within, is actually based on. That in life, all of us have a share of pain, suffering, hardship, struggle, grief. So no one can be free of that, right? But when you feel that pain, when you feel that suffering, do you embrace it and come out stronger and break through, or do you give up and break down? That is the best basic premise of the book. And I'm very happy that you shared this with me and the audience, because not only have you come out stronger from everything that you've gone through, but your children have also come out stronger, is what I'm hearing you say. you know
Yes,
some,
sure.
some sometime during the first 10 minutes when you were talking about your life story, I heard you saying punishing God, right? Because that and that gives me reason to believe that you were a non-believer in your younger days, because that's what I feel about the Christian God too. Why is he so punishing and damning, always damning you into hell, damning you into purgatory, and stuff like that? Anyway, from one non-believer, I'm a non-believer, I'm an atheist completely. I don't believe in any god or religion. And in a light-hearted mode, I want to ask you that how did that transformation from a person who is to think that the God is a very punishing God, to a person who's completely a believer today, who talks about God in almost every third sentence, how did that transformation happen?
Well, when I believed God was a punishing God, um, I formed that opinion because how I used to feel about myself. I just thought I was in so much. Hello.
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, sorry. I was in so much pain and anguish that I was forever praying, and I suppose from my abuse. But I soon found out that my God's not a punishing God, and I soon found out that He's a God of love. He's a God of kindness. He's a God of discipline as well. And the God that I believe in today, when I was in the prison, I got touched inwardly, not outwardly, by something far greater than me. And it wasn't a flash of lightning. It wasn't anything that you could think was sort of supernatural. Though it was supernatural, but it didn't I've known people to fall over. I've known people to do all sorts of things. But for me, where the hole in me was so big, from the creation of abuse to the abusive, to the father, the crime, to the drugs, my soul was dirty. And the God, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Sorry. And the God that I believe in, by the Trinity of the Holy Spirit, through the love of Christ, touched me inwardly, and I felt it. And I heard the words hope, that it never has to be like this ever again. And so when I look up and I see the wonders of heaven, I see the wonders of the air that we breathe, I see the wonders of childbirth. There's something far greater than I or anyone that goes on today that makes us spin round the sun. I mean, I just think we just take that for granted. And I think because I've witnessed change, I have a strong faith and belief that there's a God of creation, a God of forgiveness, and a God of love.
Very nice, Mike, and thank you for sharing that. And therein lies a journey of completely embracing God and believing in God. And you are, like me, born in the Christian faith. So yes, I do understand that a lot of people who believe feel that feel that halo, feel the godliness. And like I always say, it's better to be a God loving person than a God fearing person, and walk
Yeah.
that path of truth and righteousness, rather than just blindly believe in a God or a religion. Now, coming to your book, Mike, I write books of real heroes, which you would see on the screen. They're called the Karma Kari books. And karma is an Indian concept, which means basically in a nutshell means as you sow, so
You reap.
shall you reap. Right.
Amen. I
And
agree.
I write stories of true stories of real heroes, very ordinary unsung heroes. Some of them are eminent, some of them are well known, but mostly unsung, unheard of, uncommon heroes who are changing the world and making a difference in our world every day. And around the time when I started writing these books in 2010, when I first announced that I'm going to start this series, I was told that why aren't you writing about movie stars or celebrities or sports stars? Because people buy those books. Nobody wants to read about ordinary heroes. And I said, well, I'm not inspired by celebrities and movie stars because they're not doing much to change the world. But these are ordinary people who are changing the world every day with their extraordinary actions. And that's what motivates me to be their historian, because their stories are not told in the newspapers or our magazines. So I want to be their historian. I want to tell their stories. And that's what inspired me to start my journey of the Karma Kari book series. And we would surely like to feature you and your story in the Karma Kari Karishma book series, because they are all stories of resilience and breakthrough. And yours is a very inspiring breakthrough story. Now, coming to your book, Michael, which you wrote called Sins of Fathers. And for the audience, for everybody who's watching, that's Michael's book. Michael Emmett, who's written the book with Harriet Compston, and it's called Sins of Fathers. It's about his days, his story, his entire journey of life, and how he's kind of recovered from being an addict, transformed from being a gangster and a trafficker to what he's doing now. Michael, my question to you is, what inspired you to write this book? That's question one. And question two, what is the central theme of the book, and what is the feeling and emotions and insights and learning that you hoped to leave the readers with?
Okay, so what inspired the book was how big a criminal I was, how wealthy I was, and when I lost everything, yeah, and it's not about money. This when I lost everything, I was I was the owner of a famous music group. I had a radio station. I had a I had a house. I had a portfolio of homes. I had supermarkets. So I was a wealthy boy, and I lost a lot. Yeah. So in losing that, as I found Michael, people that thought there's a story here. You know, the story that's in the book about the crime, that's very small for what really went on. But I didn't want to do a story about a crime. I wanted to do a story, and I want to draw out from the book the love of self. So the journey is from my heart, from my head to my heart, to dark to light. That there is something far greater than us that can change us. That God works in all areas of our lives. So that inspired it to put it out there. We're about to do a few more journals to people who don't quite understand what the objective was, because they think it's exciting and sad. It has an opinion on both ends. But I want to extract the love of self from it. How do we love ourselves when we're taking drugs, being disobedient to our wife, or whatever we do? How do we come out of that? So we begin to love ourselves. Yeah. So we want to do some journals of the book. We've got a name for these journals, and we're going to do sort of a bit of a self-help journal for people in poverty, wealth, dysfunction, anger, control, greed, sexual addiction, drug addiction, crime, violence. So we're going to come through the journal. We're going to use extracts from the book, and we're going to do journals, about 7 journals, to make it a self-help thing, so people can identify. And if they're embarrassed to own their stuff, we're going to give them little places that they can go to or contact. The alphas, the recovery courses, the mental health issues, and we've got good people around us who want to assist in that.
And that's amazing, because that's exactly what we do with Karma Kari book series. We take stories of real heroes, and then we share insights which are life, leadership, and learning to learn lessons. Now, you spoke about how the book talks more about how you can love yourself despite all that you have done, despite uh, all that you've gone through. And yet, many people in the world are lacking the self love. There is a huge deficit of self esteem and self awareness in the world. So, when you talk about self love, how would you connect it with the concept of self awareness and self esteem? And what do you mean by loving the self? Can you expand more on that?
Yeah, I suppose low self-esteem. It's funny because it seems that we seem to be able to dislike ourselves more than we love ourselves. We seem to have a voice going on in our head that just wants to bring us down, that we're not good enough, that we're not pretty enough, we haven't got enough, we haven't got a big house, or we haven't got this, or we haven't got the new training shoes, or and that voice just wears away. And I think it impacts on the inner being that I don't feel good about myself. So it impacts on everything. Yeah. So as it begins to impact, we take an opinion of ourselves that's not true. It's the fear, the pride. And what starts to come out of low self-worth and low self-esteem are these masks. You're not going to see who I really am. So I put a mask up of control, a mask up of power, this mask of, don't you know who I am? It's all nonsense. It's all nonsense. No matter how bright you are, how tough you are, how wealthy you are, how pretty you are, all of that is not important. It's the heart. And my book is, when we do these journals, it will start to explain to people not about the crime and even the faith. It will start to explain the journey. So when we begin to, first of all, do nice things to ourselves, sleep well, speak well, love our neighbor, we then start to raise our self-esteem. And in raising our self-esteem, we start seeing telltale signs that we're okay, that we are allowed to love ourselves, because love is an action word. It's a verb to do. So when we do love, we do action. And we seem to want to people please. Do you really like me? And it's just a total waste of time. The best thing for me in my journey, and there's a lot more to unfold. That's why we try to encroach people onto our platforms, social media, the WhatsApp, the Instagram, because we're creating a community of people that we want them to come with us on the journey. And it doesn't have to make what faith you've got or you haven't got any faith. It's not about that. It's about allowing people to understand that if you don't like yourself, you can start to. No matter how far you've fallen, there is always a way out. So we're trying to raise the self-esteem, get rid of the self-hatred, get rid of the argument. How many times do we argue in our head about something that doesn't even exist? But we find things to dislike ourselves. And I think we have to put energy in a positive energy of being kind to ourselves and kind to other people.
Very nice. I'm very happy that you shared that, Mike, because that's exactly what we have covered in depth in our other book series, which is called the Mojo Inspirator book series. And it's all about self-help, it's about personal transformation, it's about personal awareness, personal discovery, and personal development. And that's exactly the journey that you are embarking on with your 7 journals. And I'm very happy about what you spoke about, how human beings lose the plot because of the mask that they wear. In psychological studies, it is called persona. A persona is a Latin word which basically means mask, because we are always trying to prove to people something that we are not, because we are so conscious about what the world thinks of us, about what the neighbors or the richer cousin thinks about what we have, what we don't have, that we forget to live our own lives and start living other people's lives. And that is actually what causes a lot of issues about self-esteem and self-awareness. And that's what we've covered in our book in depth. It's like, we've actually kind of invested 15 years of research and 5 years of writing, rewriting, and editing the book. And we've taken studies from a whole lot of books, and we cover the most essential intelligences, which is not just physical, mental, and emotional intelligence, but also spiritual intelligence and moral intelligence. Because how do you do what is right? How do you stay on the path of righteousness? How do you stay on the path of truth? Which is very difficult to do in modern times. But then, hey, that's what every religion teaches you. So what good is it following a religion when you don't practice the values or the guiding principles of humanity? And I'm so happy that you unpacked this, that we need to love ourselves not by what others think of us, but by understanding ourselves better. And what you keep saying, that I may have lost all my money, but I found Michael. And I think that's the aha moment, that how do you find yourself? Because that self-awareness about who I am, who I truly am, is missing for, I would say, 90% of the world. They are just some title or some position that they have, or the wealth and the status that they have in society. But if you dig deep down, they can't answer that simple question: who am I? And that's what the Mojo Inspirator learning
Yeah.
that we have in our books is all based on. So tell me a little more about your 7 journals. How are you kind of, and this is purely out of curiosity for me as a learning professional, because for me learning is not just a profession but a passion. And I want to know, how are you structuring your 7 journals? Because I've shown you the structure of how we've done our self-help framework, and I'm happy to work with you on the journals once I know more about it from you.
So what we're doing, we're going to take extracts from the book, and we're going to explain the journey from destruction to deliverance to freedom. On my journey, what I done to change. Now, you don't have to copy me. So each journal is going to have an extract from the book. We're going to explain it, what happened when a man got killed, let's just say, which is not great. What was the emotion? What was the power of that? We've been through a pandemic, and lots of people have lost people to death from this pandemic. What is that emotion? What do we do? How's it affected me? What do I do to find a way out? People who had money have lost their money. What do I do when I've lost all my money? When I've slept with, I've committed adultery. What do I do about that? What do I do when I want to stop taking drugs? How do I start loving myself? How do I start liking myself? How do I start speaking to people? It's going to be all about identifying the change for a person if they want to change, and it doesn't have to be by faith. It has to be by action. So we're going to there's a lot in that book that hasn't even been unpacked. We're looking forward to trying to do a documentary around the world in the prisons. And then we're going to fundraise. We've got a charity around us, and we want to raise our profile and get on the TV screens. Not because, it is an unusual story, but we want to get on there so we can draw people in and say, you know what, if you're struggling, because it seems to me everyone struggles, Jerry. They just hide it.
Absolutely. It's a part of life, and if you're trying to avoid that, you won't come out stronger. You will just be routine. And that's exactly why we kind of cover stories of true stories of real heroes, ordinary people who have gone for extraordinary. And I'm very happy that you spoke about how you're breaking it into 7 journals, because just to tell you a little about our framework in the Mojo Inspirator book, we have broken it into 0 plus 3 mindsets, 7 virtues, and 21 powers. I assume that you have logged in from your phone, so you won't be able to see the whole slide, but I'll share this with you. So we have the 0 mindset, virtue, and power, which is vulnerability, and then we have 7 virtues around that, which are triggered by that, which are enlightenment, temperance or balance, knowledge and wisdom, courage, transcendence, being humane, not just human, but humane, and proactive citizenship. Now, what are you doing as a citizen of the world? What are you doing as a human being? And that's how we've broken the life, leadership, and learning to learn lessons into 0 plus 7 virtues, and then further into 21 powers. And I would love to know more about your journals, and if there's any contribution that I could make in that, because I'm happy to share how we do our books with stories, and then intersperse the stories with insights and life lessons. And I think that's exactly what you're trying to do. So
Absolutely.
I will share those books with you. It may give you some insight about how you can kind of
Well, we
design
can
and
keep, we can keep in contact. I like you.
yeah.
I like you.
Thank you so much for that. So that it may help you with your design and development of your journals. But I'm happy
No,
to
I
know
would
that
like
you're
to do that.
I'm happy to know that you're embarking on that path. Tell me, Michael, do you do professional speaking or motivational speaking?
Yeah, I do professional speaking.
Okay, very nice. And we have a group called the Magnificent Seven where we go and inspire people in corporates and organizations and conferences. And I will send you that video. We would love to make you a part of the Magnificent Seven also.
I'd
Yeah,
love that.
we are far from magnificent, but our stories are magnificent. We are all broken down, but we
Bless you.
refuse to break through. That's our basic story, that we are broken down, but we refuse to break through. And
Oh,
Michael, I must
amen.
share this with you at this moment, that like you, I had a tough childhood. My father died when I was 8. And yes, if I had not made some right choices in my life, I could have walked a different path too. I did grapple with smoking pot for 4 months of my life, and I could have graduated to bigger things like heroin and brown sugar, or smack as it is called in India.
Mm.
But I decided not to do that because the love of my mother and all the effort and investment that she put into my education gave me that little sensibility to say I should not walk this path and stop all this. And that's how I stopped doing all that at the age of 16, and decided to chase a corporate career. And I started working at the age of 16 and volunteering in a red light district or a sex work district of Bombay, where I truly found my true calling and who I am as Jerry Almeida. So I'm happy that you shared that, Mike, and I find a lot of synergies, and I empathize with your story. It's all about the choices we make. Mike, there must be some anecdotes in the book which are your favorite anecdotes. Do you want to share a couple of them?
Yeah, there's a few in there. I mean, excuse me. There's one in there, it's a biblical, I'll come away from that and explain it differently. So, if we use our mind for practical purposes, yeah,
Right.
it will be renewed. It will be renewed. It will be rewired. If we allow our mind to be for practical purposes, it allows our heart to speak. So at the moment, mine's all about love language. It's all about love language. And there's a few I use, you know, it's only one day at a time. The truth will set you free. And, I use funny little Cockney words because I'm a Cockney, a Londoner. I have all little funny words that I use that have started coming out on social media. But bottom line, I think the antidote to all of what I say and what I do is love. That's what I want to say.
Very nice. And I like that, because love is what makes the world go around besides hope.
Yeah. I
Absolutely.
like you. You're a cool guy.
Thank you so much, Mike. And this is the first time we are meeting. And I'm very happy to know that there are a lot of synergies, not only with our life stories and our journey of life. Of course, I made some different choices, or I could have become a gangster and that was a choice which was contemplated by many of my peers, my contemporaries. But I chose not to go on that path. Mike, I want to ask you another question. In our world, most human beings don't like to be vulnerable, and most people think vulnerability is weakness. And
No.
if you see that slide which is on the screen right now, in our book, in the Mojo's Inspirator book, we say vulnerability is the core power that humans have to develop, because it is not a weakness. It is a weakness only in the Oxford Dictionary or the Webster's Dictionary. But in the human space, it is power, because it helps you to understand that you have strengths, but you also have a lot of weaknesses. It helps you to understand interdependence. It helps you to understand harmonious coexistence. It helps you to keep an open mind. It helps you to
Mm.
let go of the ego. What are your thoughts about vulnerability? Do you like to feel, to understand vulnerability, I mean, today I'm sure you understand that, but in your earlier days, did you ever feel the vulnerability?
I felt vulnerable from a very young age, and I think that's what promoted me to pick the mask up. But I love being vulnerable today. I love being. I mean, so they think vulnerability. They think surrender's weak. Surrender is strong, because I'm vulnerable to something that I want to change. So my vulnerability exposes the power of the darkness, because the darkness doesn't want to be vulnerable. It wants to be powerful. It wants to cheat. It wants to destroy. It wants to steal. It wants to manipulate. It wants to shout. But when you become vulnerable, God says, in your weakness, I am strong. So I think vulnerability is beautiful. I love the vulnerability in Michael, because it creates humility. It creates things that are wonderful, that are kind. Vulnerability, when you practice, see, when you allow people to see you're vulnerable, they might take advantage at first. But when they start to sing, it's a character that you have, and vulnerability is kind and nice and thoughtful, I think people then sort of expose their own vulnerability. Yeah, because we're like-minded. You know, iron sharpens iron. If you see love in someone, you gravitate to it. You might not at first, but eventually you do. And that thing, surrender, I think to surrender is strong. Surrender is strong, and vulnerability. I love it. I love it.
Absolutely. And I'm so happy that you explained it in such a beautiful way, because that's exactly what it is. And whether you want to recover from narcotics or alcohol, you know, I think that's the first thing you learn in any of the support group circles, whether it's Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous. How do you embrace your vulnerability? Because vulnerability, in the true sense of the word, is power. It helps you to keep an open mind for transformation, to change, and for continuous improvement. And that's how we've unpacked it in our book. And finally, coming back to your book, Michael, uh, what are your plans going forward? Because you're doing a lot of work helping people to recover now, helping the youth, helping people who are on a different path, on the wrong path, to understand life better and recover. So what are your what is your vision going forward from now to the rest of your life?
My vision is to succeed for the value of the broken, to succeed to home the homeless, to succeed to help the prisoner, to succeed. I want to own homes where they can come and live. I want them to work on farms. Prevention is better than cure. I want to be available. I want to be a back magnet for the blessing, because we only keep what we got by giving it away. So I want this to be blessed with the charity. I want it to be blessed with the film financially, but to use the money financially to help others. Yeah. Use my experience to help others, use my inner love for myself to help others. And I think going forward, the right people involved with us, you know, there seems to be favour. There's been lots of people sort of making a few signs about it. A lot of people are making promises. But at the end of the day, the vision is that we see many people out of bondage. That's the vision. But I tell you what, if anyone, I don't know if you could do this, could you let people know that you can buy the book on Amazon or any leading other bookstores?
Yes, we will. And
Sorry.
that's already there in the poster that we put out on social media. And for all
Okay.
our audience who's watching out there, the book is available on Amazon, uh, in in a digital format and hardcover, or soft cover, whatever you feel like. A paperback that you want to buy, you can purchase it on Amazon, because proceeds from the book are all going for the noble work being done by Mike to rehabilitate people in prison, people who are drug users, etc. So that's Mike's book for you, Sins
And
of
they can also,
Fathers.
sorry, Jerry, they can also follow us on Michael Emmett Official
Right.
on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. Michael Emmett Official, and they can
Right.
get a bead of what we're doing. I hope
Very nice.
you're following us, aren't you?
Yes, I am following you. That's how I found you.
We're following you.
All right. So we keep following each other then. And it's one merry-go-round and a virtuous circle. So what is the organization that you have formed called now, this not-for-profit charitable organization? What is the name of that organization?
Well, we're just about to. We're involved with a few charities. One is Alpha in Prisons, and there's another charity down on the South Coast. But the one we're opening, and we're in the process of doing, so our donations at the moment for the books go into the charity, which is it's a Alpha in Prisons. This is it's associated to my church. Yeah, but it takes a while to open charities. Yeah, but we're involved with a number of charities. Yeah,
Excellent.
But the ones that our charity, when it's open, is called Finish Well.
Finish well.
Yeah.
All right. That's like a finishing masterclass on its own about how do you finish well. Reminds me of another book called Die Empty. I don't know if you read it, but if you get an opportunity, do read it. It says die empty. Give everything that you have away before you go. So,
Amen.
Michael, it's been a pleasure speaking with you. I am not only a writer, but I'm also a fundraiser by passion. If there is any support that I can extend to all the noble work that you're doing, uh, count me in as a volunteer, a helper, a colleague, an associate. It was a brilliant experience speaking with you, and I'm not saying this lightly because, like I said, I found a lot of synergies, a lot of commonalities with your story. I've had a similar journey, but like I said, though broken down, we refuse to break down. We break through, and that's the magnificence within us. Are there any concluding, closing insights that you want to share with our audience and with all of us for our further learning?
If you're struggling out there and you're ashamed of yourself and you're in pain and you're hiding and you're frightened and you don't know what to do, trust me, there's so many things, especially after this pandemic, what's going on, of people wanting to help. Do not stay on your own. Do you know these suicidal thoughts, drug addictions, no matter what you've got, it doesn't belong to love. It belongs to the dark. And the dark wants you out of it. So I'm just encouraging you. If anyone wants to contact for our social media or contact this man, or there's so many other groups out there willing to embrace your pain and love you. And I just want to wish everyone happiness, peace, as we come through these troubled times. And my last word is that the key to all this is to love yourself. Just to love and like yourself and be kind. Jerry, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Mike. It's a pleasure. And to all our viewers out there who are listening in, thank you so much for joining in. Thank you, Mike, for sharing those wonderful life, leadership, and learning to learn lessons, as we call, which has been recognized as the most essential skill of the future. And to all our readers and viewers out there, please do go and buy Mike's book, Sins of Fathers. Not only will you gain a lot of life lessons from the book, but you'll also be supporting Mike's noble mission to help rehabilitate people who are in prison, people who are drug users. So thank you so much, Mike. Absolute pleasure conversing with you, and thank you so much. All the best and all the happiness.
Keep in touch, Jerry.
Absolutely. We will be in touch. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.